it's Lizzie. So today I'm going to talk about 5 things Christians get wrong about marriage and dating. Number 1, marriage is for us.
To love is not to need or to be needed. To love is not to lack or to possess. To love is like a man who would lay down his own life for the people who would have him put to death.
Number 1, marriage is for us. So for the vast majority of human history, marriage has been seen as an economic institution. That doesn't mean that the couple didn't care about each other, didn't feel an emotional connection, but the primary purpose of getting married was to stabilize society and to have children. So the modern idea that marriage is primarily about romantic love and the emotions that you feel, what you're getting out of the relationship, is something completely brand new. And it's not at all surprising to me that this transition to this new view of marriage has led to a really high divorce rate. We want that rush of emotions. We want to feel so known by someone, but that's the completely wrong attitude. Marriage is about serving someone else and providing a stable home for children. Christianity has a lot to say about what love means and what marriage is. In Ephesians 4:2, it says, "Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love." Another verse about marriage is Hebrews 13:4-7. "Marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept pure. Keep your lives free from the love of money, and be content with what you have. Because God said, 'Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you.'" I really think it is so intentional that they put this "free of the love of money" right next to a passage about marriage, because our culture is so consumerist and capitalistic, and it's all about what we're getting out of something. And once we stop getting something out of a marriage or getting something out of going to church, we leave that and we cut that out of our lives and we go after things that we're getting something from. The way Christianity defines love and the way love should be within marriage, it's all about what you are giving, not what you're getting. 1 Corinthians 13 is so cliche. We read it all the time, but if everyone actually lived it out, we would have such a more stable society. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. That's what marriage is supposed to be. And so I think all relationships in your life, all types of love, but especially marriage, is so good for our souls and for our human flourishing, because it forces you to take the focus off of yourself and instead care so much about another person's well-being. There's this tendency with modernism where a lot of people say, I don't like children, I don't want to have kids. But I just want to clarify that I think the purpose of having children is because it completely takes the focus off of yourself, and everything you're doing is for your child to help them grow. And I think that is so integral for spiritual development. And I think that when we choose who we marry, it's a lot less about us, and it's about thinking about our future children and who they'll have as a spiritual, emotional leader in their life. It's so powerful because the Bible starts off with a marriage. In Genesis 2:24, it says, "This is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united with his wife. They become one flesh." And then the Bible ends with a marriage. It ends with the marriage between God and the church once we get to heaven. And so marriage is seen all throughout the Bible. And it's supposed to be not an end in itself, but a way for us to better understand, feel in a tangible way God's love. And in the same way that God created sex as a way to be fruitful and to multiply, God created the church to also be fruitful. Jesus uses tons of plant metaphors while he was doing his ministry. He describes the church like a vine with branches, and he talks about the parable of the sower sowing different seeds, and the way Jesus established baptism as a way to be born again into the Christian community. Do you see what I mean? In the same way marriage produces children, the church produces new believers. And so it's so interconnected, and it's so much bigger than ourselves. So we don't really have covenants in our society anymore. We have contracts, which means that if one person breaks their side of the agreement, the contract falls apart. But marriage was established within Christianity as a covenant, which goes back to the whole marriage is a metaphor for Christianity, because Jesus established a covenant for us. He established a covenant with Abraham, with the Israelites, and then the new covenant in the New Testament. So the night before he was crucified, when he's doing the Last Supper, and he takes the bread and the wine during the Passover supper, and he says, Take, drink, this is my blood, the new covenant poured out for you. And so a covenant does not get broken apart. Just like Hosea and Gomer, where she kept cheating on him again and again and again. And Hosea kept rescuing her and going back to her to show how God's love is for us when we go astray, when we don't follow him, when we stop believing him. God still loves us. That covenant never ever changes. And so sex within a marriage is supposed to be a metaphor of communion. It all is so interconnected. It's really, really cool. So marriage was created to be so much more than about how we feel or about romance. It's about being selfless, completely giving ourselves to other people. And it's meant to point us towards God's love, to be the structure within Christianity so that we can raise children in the church. Number 2, be terrified of sex. Sex is bad. Don't even be in the same room as someone you are dating. I was watching a YouTube video on actually Girl Defined, and I love their channel. A lot of their videos I completely agree with, I'm on board with, but a few things they say are just kind of cringy and fundamentalist. I watched an interview where they interviewed a couple that had been recently married, and they asked them how they didn't have sex when they were dating, how they remained pure, and they said that they never would be in a car together driving somewhere, and they never were alone in the same room.
And we just hung out with different groups of people and settings where it was just great, where we could interact with each other. Like, for example, I didn't really want us driving in a car necessarily together.
That is extreme. And if you're not like that in your relationship, you don't have to feel like you're doing something wrong. Genesis 2:28 is really clear, where sex is for marriage. And in Mark 10, this concept is repeated, reiterated, so that we're really clear on this. And the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. At the same time, though, it's like we've gone too far, and churches have been so scared about this that they've almost condemned sex, talked about it in a negative way, when that's really not how the Bible talks about sex. Some parts of the Bible are so straight up and sexual about how great sex is and physical things in relationships. And I wanted to read some of those passages. Your breasts are like two fawns, like twin fawns of a gazelle that browse among the lilies. Until the day breaks and the shadows flee, I will go to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of incense. How delightful is your love, my bride. How much more pleasing is your love than wine. Your lips drop sweetness as the honeycomb, my bride. You are a garden locked up. You are a spring enclosed, a sealed fountain. So they're being very sexual, but they're emphasizing that she was a virgin, he was a virgin before they got married. That's how marriage always is supposed to be within Christianity. And this is chapter 1, where the woman is talking. My beloved is to me a sachet of myrrh resting between my breasts. My beloved to me is a cluster of henna blossoms from the vineyards of En-Gedi. Let's go on to chapter 2. Like an apple tree among the trees of the forest is my beloved among the young men. I delight to sit in his shade, and his fruit is sweet to my taste. Let him lead me to the banquet hall, and let his banner over me be love. And it just continues and goes on and on. And there's other verses in Proverbs or Ecclesiastes that speak very positively about sex and love. And so that's nothing that we need to view as a negative thing. We just need to emphasize that it's really great, really beautiful when we keep it in the context of marriage that it was created and intended for. One thing that I want to emphasize, though, is that we shouldn't be scared of having physical contact in a relationship as long as we have really strict physical boundaries. If you're not able to talk about physical boundaries with whoever you're dating, you should not be in that relationship. And you're not, like, maybe you're not emotionally ready for a relationship. What I really recommend is to think about physical boundaries before you start dating someone and never cross them. I've had friends who have told me, oh, I think I went too far with my boyfriend, and it's because they didn't think ahead of time of what their boundaries are. And when you're in the moment and you're kissing someone, you know your mind's not going to be clear. But if you really think through ahead of time, detailed what you're not okay with, then you're going to be able to stick to it a lot better. So I'm going to be really straight up because I think this will help some people. So for me, if I'm in a relationship with someone, I'm totally fine with kissing them, making out with them, totally fine. But I'm never okay with the guy touching my chest or my butt at all. If we're hugging each other and it's a tight hug and he feels my boobs or whatever, I don't really care. But I am never okay with hands going in certain places. I would never get undressed, be wearing less clothes around a guy I'm with. At the same time, though, I wouldn't say that you should never ever be in the same room, even if it's late at night, with someone who you're interested in. I think that the whole point of Christianity is that we're no longer living based upon our feelings and our impulses, but we have self-control. That's one of the fruits of the Spirit, and that's something that every single Christian should have. It's not about what we feel like doing, but what's right and what is pure. And I totally understand that some people really struggle with going too far in a relationship. Some people are just more impulsive and almost hedonistic with their personalities, and I totally get it. So if this is something that's a real struggle for you, like a temptation to go further, and both of you have this problem, then yeah, maybe don't hang out late at night in one of your apartments. Maybe that's not a good idea. But I think for some people, they can do that, and it's not gonna necessarily lead to sex. I just think it's so ridiculous. Like, it's insulting and a weakening of everyone's character to act like we're not in control and we don't have self-control. I just feel like we're so much more than just sexual beings. The whole point of being Spirit-led in Christianity is that we're no longer controlled by these emotions and impulses, but we have the freedom to choose what is right and what is pure in the situation. Like, I've heard people who say, you know, they'll only kiss someone really quick or only do like a short hug. And to me, that's very legalistic and fundamentalist. For me, my love language is physical touch. And even with my guy friends, my best friends who are female, we'll cuddle together, we'll hug each other really long and really closely. And that's how I show love and how I feel love. And if you need that in a relationship, don't feel like you can never touch someone who you're dating. Like, that's ridiculous. Cuddling does not always lead to sex. And if you're mature in your faith, strong in your faith, you can totally stick to your physical boundaries. Just talk about it with whoever you're dating. Number 3 is something I've heard people say. Don't become friends with someone of the opposite gender. That's unhealthy. You're not going to be able to maintain a platonic relationship if you get emotionally close. So I made a video when I was 19 kind of arguing this, and it's something I completely disagree with now. Some of my best friends are guys. We're emotionally close. We're spiritually close. We learn from each other. We grow together. And we're not dating. And it's fine. We don't want to date each other. I think having close friends of the opposite gender is really, really healthy because I think there are key differences between men and women. I know that's controversial to say, because I think society has ingrained these gender roles so strongly that have gone beyond the biological, but it's just a fact that guys have testosterone, women have estrogen, and the way our brains are set up, and there's so much overlap between how most men are and how most women are. There's so many people in between. I'm someone who my personality tends to be more masculine, just the way I act. And so I'm not at all saying, let's go back to gender roles, but I'm just saying there are some differences between men and women in the way we think and feel and communicate. So I think that having friends of the opposite gender, best friends, will actually set you up to be healthier in a relationship. And I also think that we should just view people as people. I am straight and female, but I shouldn't go around viewing every single guy I meet as a potential guy I could marry. Like, no! View people as people and be friends with them and just calm down. So number 4, dating is for marriage. So absolutely, you should not just be messing around with dating, playing with people's emotions, getting really close to someone who you absolutely could never see yourself with. Like, I'm not recommending that, but I think that there used to be casual dating. Like, my parents have told me what it was like when they were in college, when they were teenagers. You could go on different dates with different people. There was nothing really intense attached to it. There was no commitment attached to it. You would just go on dates and get to know different people. Nowadays, you're either friends with someone or you're in a committed relationship. I just feel like growing up in Christian culture, it was emphasized that if you're dating someone, it's so serious. If you're talking to someone, it needs to be like, are we gonna get married soon? And a lot of Christians, I've noticed, will get married really young and not date for that long. And I think some of it is that they wanna have sex. And I'm not judging anyone who's gotten married young. One of my best friends from college got married last year, and it's a really healthy relationship. I absolutely love it. I'm so happy. It's really, really beautiful what their relationship is. But I think that in general, we need to have a less intense view about dating because it puts so much pressure on a new relationship. When it's like, are we gonna get married? You cannot start a relationship with that much pressure. It's so unhealthy. And so my attitude towards dating has really changed through the years. And I think I'm very comfortable going on a first date and getting to know someone and just talking to a guy and getting to know someone as friends, even if we are kind of attracted to each other and have that dynamic, rather than viewing every single guy I am attracted to as a potential guy I could marry. I just don't have that attitude anymore, and it's very freeing. I feel like I get to know people as people rather than viewing them as a means to an end to something. Number 5, purity is about staying a virgin. As long as you don't have sex, everything else is okay. So the first thing I want to say is that emotional purity or emotional chastity is also a thing. In Song of Songs, this verse that is repeated again and again, that when I was in middle school, I read this for the first time, it always stuck with me. It says, "Do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires." And it's just echoed throughout the book. And it's almost like a warning that you can get really hurt in relationships if you try to rush into them, try to force a relationship if you're too young. And so I think that when we're getting to know a guy, there's this tendency to be so emotionally open and just completely vulnerable. In the same way that you could be so vulnerable too fast in having sex or rushing into something physical with a guy, and that could hurt you as well. And so my advice in staying pure is to also not immediately emotionally be vulnerable with someone until they earn your trust and you really get to know them. Just be slow in relationships. Don't be impulsive. But when it comes to physical boundaries, I think a lot of Christians can be legalistic about it and say, as long as we don't have sex, everything else is fine. Oral sex is fine. Hooking up with people, as long as we're just making out, is fine. Like, I personally would never condemn anyone who does these things. Like, some of my friends who are Christians will just kiss a random guy they meet at a bar. I understand physical things in a relationship as an expression of the emotional vulnerability and intellectual connection. It's like you feel so close to someone and you want to show them that you care, show them that love, and express that through something physical. So for me to disconnect the physical from knowing someone isn't what it seems to be for. And like I said, like, I literally do not feel emotional judgment toward my friends who make out with random people at bars. I understand that's something some people do. I just don't like doing that because physical touch is my love language, it's so meaningful to me. And that's why I like that sex is a part of marriage, because it makes it so meaningful and so much more beautiful that you only share that with one person. And it's the same thing where I personally don't kiss just any guy I'm attracted to. It has to be really meaningful to me. There's a verse I really like in 1 Corinthians 6:12 and 1 Corinthians 10:23. And I think Paul is probably quoting some Greek parable or something. But he says, "I have the right to do anything you say." And then he says, "But not everything is beneficial." I have the right to do anything, but not everything is constructive. And so I think some things are not necessarily technically sin or against the Bible, but is it beneficial to you? Like, what good is coming out of it? So just think of that verse when you're kind of on the fence about doing something, and don't make it just about rules and following certain rules, but what is the spirit of the law? It's kind of like the difference between being religious and being spiritual. Like, there's rules that are set up, but then what is your attitude behind it? What is it adding to your life? What kind of person will you become, or what kind of person are you being by acting a certain way? I love you guys so much. I hope that helped you a lot to rethink relationships and sex and marriage. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!
You shouted, "Save yourself," to the king they punished like a thief. I hate how you know exactly what I need, but I love how you know exactly what we need. Oh my God, if you're gonna break my heart, then why won't you